Perhaps no one has influenced our knowledge of life on Earth as much as the English naturalist Charles Darwin. His theory of evolution by natural selection, now the unifying theory of the life sciences, explained where all of the astonishingly diverse kinds of living things came from and how they became exquisitely adapted to their particular environments. His theory reconciled a host of diverse kinds of evidence, such as the progressive fossil record, geographical distribution of species, recapitulative appearances in embryology, homologous structures, vestigial organs, and nesting taxonomic relationships. No other explanation before or since has made sense of these facts. Darwin's theory argued that organisms gradually evolved through a process he called natural selection. In natural selection, organisms with genetic variations that suit their environment tend to propagate more descendants than organisms of the same species that lack the variation, thus influencing the overall genetic makeup of the species. Darwin, who was influenced by the work of French naturalist Jean-Baptiste de Lamarck and the English economist Thomas Malthus, acquired most of the evidence for his theory during a 5-year surveying expedition aboard the HMS Beagle in the 1830s. Visiting such diverse places as the Galapagos Islands and New Zealand, Darwin acquired an intimate knowledge of the flora, fauna, and geology of many lands. This information, along with his studies in variation and interbreeding after returning to England, proved invaluable in the development of his theory of organic evolution.
When Charles Darwin arrived in the Galapagos Islands in September 1835, he began a study that would alter many people's beliefs about evolution, although he did not know it at the time. Among other finds, he observed and collected a variety of small birds that lived on the islands, but he did not realize their importance and failed to keep good records of his samples and the location in which they were collected. It was not until he was back in London, thinking over his findings on the birds, that he realized that they were all different but closely related species of finch that led him toward formulating the idea of natural selection. In his book, The Voyage of the Beagle, Darwin noted, one species had been taken and modified for different ends. This quote from Darwin highlights his understanding of how the birds had evolved. The Galapagos are known for being a place where speciation can be seen at work. A few million years ago, one species of finch migrated to the Galapagos from the mainland of Central or South America. From this one species, at least 13 species of finch evolved. This process, in which one species leads to the formation of multiple species that exploit different niches, is called adaptive radiation. On the various islands, the finch species have adapted for different diets: seeds, insects, flowers, the blood of seabirds, and leaves. The ancestral finch was a ground-dwelling, seed-eating finch. After the event of speciation in the Galapagos, a total of 14 species existed. 3 species of ground-dwelling seed-eaters, 3 others living on cactuses and eating seeds, 1 living in trees and eating seeds, and 7 species of tree-dwelling insect eaters. Scientists that came after Darwin spent years trying to understand the process that created so many types of finches that differed mainly in the size and the shape of their beaks. Most recently, Peter and Rosemary Grant spent many years in the Galapagos, seeing changing conditions in the climate from year to year that dramatically altered the food supply. As a result, certain species of the finches lived or died depending on which species' beak structure was best adapted for the most abundant and available food, just as Darwin would have predicted.
Following his voyage abroad, the HMS Beagle, Darwin returned to England to publish his book of findings from the Galapagos Islands, titling it The Origin of Species. The idea of organic evolution was not new. It has been suggested earlier by, among other, Darwin's grandfather, Aramis Darwin, distinguished English scientist, and Lamarck, who in the early 19th century drew the first evolutionary diagram, the latter leading from one-celled organisms to man. However, it was not until Darwin that science presented a practical explanation for the phenomenon of evolution. Darwin had formulated his theory of natural selection by 1844, but he was wary of revealing his thesis to the public because obviously contradicted the biblical account of creation. In 1858, with Darwin still remaining silent about his findings, British naturalist Alfred Russel Wallace independently published a paper that essentially summarized his theory. Darwin and Wallace have gave a joint lecture on evolution before the Linnean Society of London in July 1858. And Darwin prepared the origin of species by means of natural selection for publication. Published on November 24th, 1859, The Origin of Species sold out immediately. Most scientists quickly embraced the theory that solved so many puzzles of biological science, but Orthodox Christians condemned the work as heresy. Controversy over Darwin's ideas deepened with the publication of Descent of Man and a Selection of Relation to Sex in 1871, in which he presented evidence of man's evolution from apes. By the time Darwin's death in 1882, his theory of evolution has been generally accepted. In honor of his significant work, he was buried in Westminster Abbey beside the kings, queens, and other illustrated figures from British history. Subsequent developments in genetics and molecular biology led to modifications in accepted evolution theory, but Darwin's idea remained central to the field.